Welcome to The Art of Medicine, the program that explores the arts, business, and clinical aspects of the practice of medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Andrew Wilner. I've planned a great program for today, but first, a word from our sponsor, locumstory.com. Locumstory.com is a free, unbiased educational resource about locum tenens. It's not an agency. Locum Story answers your questions on their website, podcast, webinars, videos, and they even have a Locums 101 crash course. Learn about locums and get insights from real-life physicians, PAs, and NPs at locumstory.com. And now to my guest. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with a retired pathologist who writes under the pen name of Deven Greene. Deven Greene is the author of 6 novels. She's going to tell us why she writes, how she writes, and why you might want to read one of her books. The 7th is in the making. Welcome, Deven Greene.
Well, thank you. I'm very glad to be here.
Well, I love to have physician writers on this program. I've published 4 books myself. The 5th one is the kindest way to say it would be gestating. It's, it's taken a while to get it going, but it's exciting. And I'm always interested to meet other doctors who write, particularly because doctors, are pretty busy. And so it's a hard thing to squeeze in. So I want to talk a little bit, first of all, why take the trouble to write something? And then we'll get a little bit into the how, how do you make it happen? So
Okay.
6 books. And when did all this start? Was this something, you were 60 years old and said, gee, I'm going to write novels? Or does it, date back to when you were 12? How did this happen?
Well, I wish I knew. But when I was really little, I liked to write, and then I became involved with other things, and that went by the wayside. But I like to read, and I like to read a variety of things, including true crime and thrillers. All right. So at some point, I thought, I have a really good, I have a really good idea for a thriller. I just kept thinking it, you know, and but I was really too busy to consider writing. And then at some point, I decided to start. I thought, I'm just going to do it. And I was still working at the time, and that was very difficult. I know there's some physicians that are become writers, and they'll get up at 4 a.m. and write things like that. And I I don't have the energy for that. So I would mostly write on the weekends, in the evenings. Sometimes I would take some vacation days and just write. So anyway, I did first. I did take courses, and I read some books on writing. I think there's things to learn. It seems like one could just sit down and start writing, but there's really things to learn about tempo and um, different aspects of making a successful book. So I did some research, and then I decided it's time to start. And actually, my husband and I were going on a vacation, and that's when I started. I brought my laptop, and I started. And that book has never been published. So I did complete it. And then when I retired, I really decided to really get into writing very seriously, spend a lot of time at it. Not that I didn't spend a lot of time on the first book, but I just never got it published. And I get ideas, and I'm kind of looking at the next shiny thing. So by the time I finished that book, I really wanted to write a different one. So it was always put on the back burner. I can always come back to that. I'll come back to that and publish it. It was really finished, but it wasn't really quite publishable yet. So I just haven't backtracked. And actually, the subject of that book was weight loss, because that's such a huge industry. But if I wanted to publish it now, I'd have to completely redo it, because we have all these weight loss products now that almost everybody that seems to be on. I've been surprised. I've been talking to people, and they say, oh yeah, I'm taking that. And they're not, why? Oh, I had some cardiac problems, and people are taking it for all sorts of reasons. So at this point, I would have to have a completely different approach. But it's always been an issue with people wanting to lose weight and willing to pay a lot of money to lose weight. But anyway, that was my first book, not published, not one of the six. So then when I did retire, I got serious about writing my next book. And actually, what happened was I was going to write another book, which now is my second book. But then I decided I wanted to write another book first. An idea came and I just had to do it. Okay. So that was the birth of the Erica Rosen MD trilogy. So I have 3 books that are about a pediatrician of all things. And I thought, a pediatrician, who would think of a pediatrician as being involved in some, crime fighting? So I think one can imagine almost anybody else, but not a pediatrician. But anyway, I decided to make it a trilogy. And the first one was about genetic engineering, human genetic engineering. And the second one that I wanted to write first was about autism. And then the third one, I had to think about what am I going to do for my third one, and it's about pharmaceuticals. And then I've moved on, and none of my other books are related. But I really enjoy it. I tried not
Well,
to
there you
spend.
go. I think that's the bottom line. This is fun, right? This is
Yeah,
fun
yeah,
and
and
hard work, but fun. Well, let's talk a little bit about the work. You mentioned you're willing to work in the evenings, on the weekends, and take holidays from work. You went on vacation with your husband. He went off golfing. You stayed there with your laptop. Um,
yeah.
how do you do it on a daily basis?
Well, things are different now because I'm retired. Okay, so it took me a while to get my rhythm, you might say, because once you're retired, you just have a lot of time. You can do stuff, and it's almost paralyzing. I could do anything, you know.
Right.
It's um, so at first I just started just writing, just all the time, writing all the time. And then I decided, I think my husband wasn't too happy about that, and I just was spending too much time writing. I realized I was
I
spending too
can
much
hear
time.
him. Now you're retired and you're busier than ever, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So what happened was I slowly kind of developed my rhythm, and now there's different parts of writing a book. So the first is the rough draft, and that's my most structured time. I write usually. This is what I do when I'm doing a rough draft. I get up, I have my coffee, breakfast, and then I sit down to write, and I write 1,100 words, and then I'm done for the day. And so if you do the arithmetic in 1,100 words a day, I've got the rough draft in less than 3 months. All right.
Well, I got to ask, why not 1,000? Where did you come up with 1,100?
I started with 1,000, and then I thought, I'll just do 10% more.
All right, you're a high achiever. Okay.
And actually a lot of writers say, wow, 1,100, that's a lot. So different people, some people will write a certain number of words a day, and some people will write for a certain amount of time a day. Those are the 2 major things people might choose. And then some people just write when they feel like it. But I like to be very structured, and I write 7 days a week, 1,100 words a day. And I actually write down, on Word, it tells you how many words you have in your document. So I write it down when I'm done. Then I go 1,100, or often a little bit more, because you don't land exactly on 1,100. And I have a list
And it
of
can't
what
be
I've done every
less.
day.
So it's always going to be a little bit more, right? If it's
Yeah,
1099, you're going to have to come up with another sentence.
you got it. You got it. I always do complete a sentence. I don't
You just leave
stop.
it hanging there. But you have to know what to say. Do you know what to say before when you sit
Well,
down?
well, that's a good question. I'm constantly thinking about it. So when I'm not writing, I'm thinking about what I'm going to write next. And sometimes I don't quite know what I'm going to write next. And some days takes me longer than others. On days where I really know exactly what I'm going to write for 1,100 plus words, it comes out pretty quickly. Other days I may struggle. And another question people often ask is, how much do I plan my book in advance? That's a question that comes up a lot. And and usually people say, are you a plotter or a pantser? A plotter being somebody who writes a detailed plot outline, and a pantser somebody who writes by the seat of their pants. And I think most people, especially those that write fiction, are in between, and I'm in between. I started off trying to write a pretty tight outline of what I was going to write, and I realized once you get down to the granularity of putting the words down, things pop into your head. You just get distracted, go in different ways, and there are times when, actually, I'm planning my next book that I haven't started yet, and I still haven't decided. There's two ways things could go. And they both come back to the same place, but there's two ways things could go. And I may not decide what to do until I get down there and just am typing it, because I keep going back and forth. I should do it this way. No, I should do it that way. So I'm not a tight plotter, that's for sure. I definitely have a plot, an overall plot in mind. And I always have pretty much a happy ending. Okay, so things get resolved. So I know that is going to come to that place.
Well, that's very interesting. I interviewed one writer and he had everything spelled out in his outline. And then when he would sit down to write, really, all he had to do was fill in the blanks. And I've talked to other writers who say, well, what's the point of that? The whole point is kind of discovery and animating your characters and let them make the decisions, it'll become clear what they want to do if you've created a good character. And it's hard to know all that before you even start. So I think philosophically, there really is a spectrum of where to. It sounds like you're kind of in the middle. I want to jump to the end for a minute.
Okay.
Publishing. Are these self-published? Do you have a quote real publisher? Tell us about that end of the business.
Well, I started off really wanting to have a publisher, and I did have a publisher, a small publisher. Okay, there's the big five. Maybe it'll be the big four in another week. I don't know.
Right.
But
Soon there'll just be one.
yeah, maybe there'll be just one. But those are great to get, but pretty much impossible for someone like me. I mean, if you haven't been in the industry or extremely good luck. But most of the people that land that have already developed their careers long time ago, or they have connections in journalism or things like that. So anyway, but there's a number of smaller publishers, and I did land one of them. Okay, actually, I had two that were interested, and before I took my first firm offer, and I went with that small publisher. And I stayed with it because I thought that kind of I've got a publisher, it gave me some gravitas, some kind of respect. And then I published 3 books with that publisher. And then the 4th book, I didn't want to use that publisher, so stupid me, I went with a different small publisher for my 4th book. And then I decided I don't want to use a publisher. I want to self-publish. I know a lot of writers now because I belong to some writing groups, and so I've met a number of people that write, and they're really, almost all of them are self-published. And so I talked to some people, found out how to do it, and so I got the rights back from my first 3 books, and I have self-published those now. That's the Erica Rosen MD trilogy, and then I've got one that is still with the second small publisher, and I will get the rights back when the contract expires, and I will self-publish that. And then the 2 I've done recently are totally self-published. And I'll say this much, I'm glad I did go with a small publisher, because when I decided to self-publish, I got all the files back. So I didn't have to learn how to do that. There is a learning curve. Now, there are companies you can hire. So if you just have a document, you can hire a company to do everything for you, from getting your copyright to getting things, the inside of the book, the cover, everything you need to do. You can hire companies to do that, but I was able to do everything on my own, having the files already made. So it wasn't as steep a learning curve. The last two books that I've done, I've just done completely on my own.
Well,
Just,
this is not a ringing endorsement for small publishers. Why did you decide that it was better to do it yourself?
well, they take a big cut of the money. Not that there's that much money to take a big cut of, but they do take a cut, and they don't do much.
They didn't do anything, right? What are you guys doing, right? They put it up on Amazon. You can do that, right?
Yeah, and since I now control everything, if I were to want to put something on sale, I can just do it. I otherwise it's very cumbersome. You call the pub, you have to make all sorts of arrangements if you want to do something. This makes it very easy. I'm just totally in control. Now, there's some writers that actually sell books on their website. I haven't gone that far. They don't, yeah, so I still sell through Amazon, of course, is the big one, but any place else where you can buy books, my books can be ordered.
Is there been has there now you're pretty detail oriented, I think. Have you seen any difference in your sales, for example, and in your self-published versus traditional published books? Is there been any difference?
No, no. So it's all it's really all about advertising. It that because I've learned things don't happen. They don't go viral. They, I mean, you may be lucky enough to be picked up by an influencer or somebody like that, but it's all just trying to get your books out there yourself. And it doesn't matter if you are self-published or have a small publisher because they don't really do it. They'll put your books up on their website.
All right, well, that's
Okay.
question 11 on my script here. How to self promote as an author with all the noise out there. It's a great thing for authors now that you can self publish, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if I have a book that's sitting next to me over there that I wrote many decades ago before they had self publishing. And it went to all the people, and some of them said it was great, but they, weren't ready to publish it. Another one said it was terrible. Anyway, it never got published. And it's a little dated now. Like you say, I would have to make some changes. They weren't using cell phones, in my book, that had pictures. So I would have to make some technical changes.
Uh-huh.
But now anybody can put up a book. So I think there are millions of book published every year. How do you
There are.
separate yourself from the noise?
Well, that's a good question, and I wish I had the answer. So, I'm still, I have a newsletter, I have a website, I I now have a Facebook page, which I don't use much. So, and slowly there is some word of mouth, but it's very slow. Every once in a while, I run an ad. I think that I've kind of seen other authors that I think do better than me. And what they do is when they publish their book, they spend a lot of money on ads.
Hmm.
It could be the worst book in the world. It doesn't matter. They spend a lot of money. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but even like James Patterson, when he has a new book, it's advertised on TV. He's got people paying a lot of money to advertise his books, and they sell because people know about them. Also, getting your book into bookstores, that's a whole other thing that the bigger publishers do, but the smaller publishers don't do that. You have to do it
That was a
yourself.
question I had because obviously you want to walk into Barnes and Noble and see your book, and the big publishers, of course, can do that. But I wondered whether the small ones really can do any better than you.
No,
No.
in a
Okay. Well,
word,
there's an answer.
in a
All right.
word, no.
So there's a question I have to ask because everybody always asks, and you can say as much or as little about this as you want, but can you make a living as a writer? I mean, you've got 6 books. That sounds like a lot.
Oh no, I could not possibly live off of what I make. Not
Ah,
possibly.
all right. And I can see, I don't know, I took a quick peek at your office. You don't look like a real extravagant kind of person. So
Yeah,
So
well,
It's not like you have to pay for the jet, and the driver. It's just like,
I
so,
got a discount on the jet. No,
okay.
just kidding.
So making a living as a writer is a elusive goal, would you say?
I would say so. There's a saying, there are more people making money off of writers than writers making money. Okay. And I think it's true because you can spend a lot on taking courses, paying a publicist, uh, buying all sorts of services. I don't do that. Maybe I should. But another word of caution I'll say to any new writers, there's a ton of scammers out there now. It's unbelievable. It seems to have really picked up in the last year. A day doesn't go by when I don't get multiple scans. And I don't even know how they all get, because I get messages from them in different ways.
Hmm.
And I used to just get them through my website, which is fine, but some are directly contacting me, and that really bothers me.
Well, we'll take a second on that because it's happened to me also. I remember getting a phone call, Dr. Wilner, we saw your book, The Locum Life, and we're so interested, and we have great news that a traditional publisher has picked it up and they're going to give you a $50,000 advance. And my book's been published for a number of years, and frankly, it's a very niche market. It sold about 1,000 copies plus, which is hardly
Mhm.
a bestseller. And I thought this was fantastic. So I called them
Sure.
back, and the guy talked to me for an hour, and he wanted to do this. But first, he said, we're going to have to look at the book because we might have to do some editing just to get it prepared for the
Oh.
publisher. That sounded a little phony. Anyway, it turns out I've gotten many more of these coming from different directions, and it is a well-known scam. And of course, with the internet, I have a website and my information is available and the book is available and summaries of the books are available. So someone can call you cold and be pretty well informed.
Mhm.
If they, of course, this guy wasn't even know what the book was about, and I thought that was a little strange. So writers really do have to be very, very careful. It's the old saying, if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. I mean, I think most writers think their books are really good. Yeah,
Of
I mean,
course.
writers work hard on their books, whether or not you like their genre or their book or whatever. They've worked hard on it and they're proud of it. And so when somebody comes to you and says, "I love your book, I have all these great plans for it, blah blah blah," it's so believable because, of course, finally someone's recognizing. But I have on my particular website, I can find out where a number of inquiries are coming from. Not all of them, but I get a lot from Nigeria.
Ah, well, there you
Okay.
go.
Yeah, and I know, and they write to me using kind of American names. Okay, and they sound good, and some of them are better than others. I'll say that. I've started to notice, like, oh, some of these are really good. Some are really bad because when somebody says, "I love your book," well, which book? I mean,
Yeah, right. That's
I got
right.
6 of them. I suppose if I just had one, I would be flattered and I wouldn't think that just because the title was missing that it was suspicious. But I got 6 books out there, and when you say I love your book, not books plural,
Right
I'm
away.
I
There's a giveaway.
yeah,
It's very
yeah.
interesting. Let me change the topic for a minute. You practiced as a physician. In your books now, do you consider yourself a medical educator, or are these just fun, or
Okay, well, that's another good question. I like my books first of all, or primarily to be fun, but I always have information in there. I hope that readers learn something from my books. So it may not be medicine, it may be more science, what I call sciency. um, and what I do is I um, I will write something that's kind of technical or medical, however you want to phrase that, and I have people read it that are not physicians or scientists. Okay, so I always start off with something that's just too detailed, and and I just there's a lot of smart people out there. They just don't have the background. but they want to learn things. So I try to make it accessible to everyone. And so I get it to a point where I think people who want to learn or understand it can understand it. So sometimes it takes me a little while to get there because I like to keep things accurate. I sometimes I leave out certain steps just to make it more readable, but I do really try to make my descriptions of those sorts of things very accurate.
All right, before we go any further, what is your website, please?
Oh, it's Deven Greene. That's DevenGreene.com. And I'll say this, stick in as many E's as you can. Okay. So it's Deven with 2 E's, Greene with 3 E's, and an E at the end. And I always mention that there is a Deven Greene without an E on the end, who is a comedian who's very much on the edge. And she's more popular than I am. So, so a lot of times if you Google me, they'll say, "Oh, did you mean Deven Greene without the E?" And you'll get a lot of her stuff.
All right. Well, we were talking a little bit before I pressed the record button about your decision to have a pen name. So tell us first why, and then secondly, why that. I mean, if you're going to pick a pen name, right, you could pick any name in the universe, right? So why a pen name?
Well, I tend to be kind of a private person, and I was and actually a lot of beginning authors start this way. They're kind of embarrassed. They don't want anybody to know that they're writing because they could fall flat on their face. And so I just thought I don't really want people out there to know who I am, and I don't want people to know I'm writing. I slowly started telling people, like my friends, that I'm writing. My husband knew, and my brother, they're kind of the only people that knew. So and actually the name is, I'll just say, similar to my real name.
Okay, so you drew from that. But doesn't that make it hard to promote your books if you're not really who you say you know what I mean? If the name on the book isn't your name, how do you
Well, I just go by Deven Greene whenever I'm talking about my books. And some people know that that's not my real name. Like Lee Childs, that's not his real name, but I don't even know what his real name is. There's a number of famous authors that use pen names. So it's not that unusual.
So you found it hasn't really gotten in the way of your marketing.
No, it gets a little awkward sometimes when filling out forms for publishing, like what's your name, and then which name do I put down, things like that. More legal stuff. But for marketing, it's not a problem. It's just Deven Greene. And I did pick the name. I went through a number of names, and I would Google them, and then I would find, oh, there's somebody else with that name. So this was not the first name I came up with. And believe me, when I Googled it, the other Deven Greene didn't come up. So the one without the E.
Maybe a more recent kind of invention, this other.
Yeah, she may have become more famous in the interim as I was, getting things published, but that's the way it goes.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to talk about one of your books. Tell me about the one you said, I think it was the second book, maybe, about autism. Oh. Why autism, and what was the point of the book?
Okay, well, autism. Okay, so some people ask me if my characters are based on somebody, and they aren't. They're sort of a combination of people that I know or imagine, except for the second book. And the main character, other than Erica Rosen, is a young autistic man, and he's modeled after my son. I have a son with autism, and he's severely autistic. His communication is very bad, but he has certain splinter skills. And a lot of people have heard of splinter skills, or they call them savants if they're very advanced. So he has splinter skills, but his communication is very bad. And I had always thought that an autistic person would make a great suicide bomber because they can look perfectly normal. They can be taught to follow instructions, and they don't know what they're doing. So I mentioned this to my husband, and he said, "Oh, that's ridiculous." Well, we went to the airport. We were going on a trip, and we had to go through one of the machines that they circle you at the airport. So before we got in there, I was explaining to him, because he will follow instructions. Like I said, lift your arms up, walk in there. And the man operating the machine said, he noticed what I was doing and he said, oh, he can just go through. So he got no screening. And this was sort of my experience. So, so I had a character that was really modeled on my son. I've read other books and seen shows about these autistic people, or so-called what I call so-called autistic people. Now they're called on the spectrum, which when they're at the top of the spectrum, I don't know that they really should have a disease attributed to them. Okay, but he is definitely autistic, and I had his character be the only person that could solve this dilemma of suicide bombers, but he really wasn't talking. So Erica Rosen, who in the first book was dealt a lot with disabled children, was able to slowly get the information from him, and that's what the book is. I wanted it to be realistic, because I kept thinking, what would he do? What would he do in this situation? And of course, he's never been involved with a plot to be a suicide bomber, but I tried to make it as realistic as possible, rather than something fantastic and something I wouldn't believe.
What a wonderfully original and thoughtful story.
Yeah, well, yeah, that book was kind of special for me. So I have a book written about him. I dedicated it to him, but he doesn't know it.
Well, that's really lovely. And I'm going to read that one
Okay.
for sure. And that's, that's one of the reasons I like to talk to writers, because, you read a book and you say, all right, I always want to meet that person. It's like, well, what were they thinking? Why did they write it, this way? And so now I have a clue. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so that's the name is Unwitting. So I call it the unseries. They're all unnatural, unwitting, and unforeseen. So I got on the
Okay.
wagon.
All right. So 1 minute about your next book, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay, well, my next book it's actually an eco thriller. It's it's got a scientific basis for it, but it's about rhino poaching. And one thing I really like about writing is I do a lot of research. I research not only what I'm the main subject, but a lot of ancillary things, because I want to learn more than I'm going to put in the book. I don't put everything I know in the book. I want to know more than I put in the book. So I was doing a lot of research about this particular thing, and I was going to either do rhino poaching or elephant poaching, the rhino horns and elephant tusks. And I learned that rhino horns are worth a lot more. They're the most valuable substance by weight in the world, more than diamonds and gold and cocaine. I was
Wow.
shocked. Okay, so and that's why it's so hard to control. So in my book, I have a way to control it, uh, based in science. And as I was putting my story together, I thought, I wonder if somebody's thought of this already, because my books are all what I consider doable. They're not science fiction, really. They're doable, and in general, they haven't been done before. So, but I decided to I'd never heard of anyone doing this, and then I found out, yeah, people had tried to do it, and they got slapped down by environmentalists of all things. And I was totally shocked. I was surprised at the reasons, and I think it's wrong. And I talked to the CEO of one of the defunct companies, who was very helpful. So he wants me to write this book so that he can start his company up again. But yeah, we'll see. And it's almost done. And the name I have for it now is Rhino Wars. So, and it takes place mainly in South Africa, where rhino poaching is crazy.
Fantastic. Well, it's been really fun and educational to speak with you today. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I would say people can visit my website if they have any questions. I have a contact form on there, and I answer all my emails unless I sense you're a scammer. So if you tell me that you want to make a movie out of my book, I probably will not answer you, especially if you don't even say what book it is. So anyway, I do love to hear from my readers. So
Deven Greene, thanks for joining me on The Art of Medicine.
thank you. It's very enjoyable.
And now a final thanks to our sponsor, locumstory.com. Locumstory.com is a free, unbiased educational resource about locum tenens. It's not an agency. Locum Story exists to answer your questions about the how-tos of locums on their website, podcast, webinars, and videos. They even have a Locums 101 crash course. At locumstory.com, you can discover if locum tenens make sense for you and your career goals. What makes locumstory.com unique is that it's a peer-to-peer platform with real physicians sharing their experiences and stories, both the good and bad, about working locum tenens. Hence the name, Locum Story. Locumstory.com is a self-service tool that you can explore at your own pace with no pressure or obligation. It's completely free. Thanks again to locumstory.com for sponsoring this episode of The Art of Medicine. I'm Dr. Andrew Wilner. See you next time. This program is hosted, edited, and produced by Andrew Wilner, MD, FACP, FAAN. Guests receive no financial compensation for their appearance on The Art of Medicine. Andrew Wilner, MD, is a professor of neurology at the University of Tennessee Health Science Center in Memphis, Tennessee. Views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on this program belong solely to Dr. Wilner and his guests and not necessarily to their employers, organizations, other group, or individual. While this program intends to be informative, it is meant for entertainment purposes only. The Art of Medicine does not offer professional, financial, legal, or medical advice. Dr. Wilner and his guests assume no responsibility or liability for any damages, financial or otherwise, that arise in connection with consuming this program's content. Thanks for watching. For more episodes of The Art of Medicine, please follow on YouTube or your favorite podcast player. Please share with your friends and subscribe. www.andrewwilner.com